We're recording. We are recording. I don't know if this is going to be loud enough or not. There we go. Now I got some presence here. So what I want to talk about really quick here is something that everybody kind of dances around, and nobody's really discussing, except for people that aren't really discussing flat Earth versus globe, which I don't really like discussing flat Earth versus globe. I really don't. I don't mind talking about the flat Earth and things that we can observe and things that are observable. I don't mind talking about the lie of the globe, because it is an absolute lie. The heliocentric model is an absolute evil, satanic lie. It was flipped over by Copernicus. It was bastardized. One of the things that we were taught in school when it came to the geography of the globe, and I went to grade school in the 80s, is that people used to be stupid and have this high hubris and think that the Earth was flat. But then Christopher Columbus, he was really smart and proved that it was a globe, and that's a monumental lie. It's an absolutely monumental lie. When I first started getting interested in flat Earth, I never really had an interest in looking into it, because I always knew that we were being lied to. I just knew that we were being lied to. I couldn't find anybody around me as a child who would really talk to me about it, or would talk to me about it. But I just instinctively knew something was up, something was wrong, always. One of the things that's happened to me in the last couple years is studying spiritual science and studying just kind of on my own. And when I say spiritual science, I think some people, they kind of call it autodidactic reasoning, becoming autodidactic. So you're not learning secondhand information, which is one of the great deceptions too. If I've seen further, it's by standing on the shoulders of ye giants who came before me. Well, you absolutely learn from the things that other people have learned, but at the same time, people are very conditioned to very easy to convince of fake things, and that's part of the conditioning of Hollywood. Movies about space and things like that, and all those things that we see that are happening on in space. Space is not real. It's not real, and it's something that we've said before and said a lot of times. It's a reflection of the Earth. It's a reflection of the realm that we live in. And Ken Wheeler put it really well. He actually says it's sort of a negative image of the ether, which I think he's absolutely right. And that goes back to the argument. And this is really what if you're arguing flat Earth with somebody who believes in the globe, really what you're arguing particles versus the ether, whether you realize that or not. So the one thing about particles is there's a lot of things that it doesn't answer, and it fails a whole lot, because the particles, there's space between the particles and they're just bumping into each other. And space is not something that actually exists. Everything is full. Light, as Ken Wheeler puts it, is basically a disturbance in the medium. I've talked about sonoluminescence. You can see it when you can see it. And so what I didn't realize, and this is, I guess, is a quote from Tesla, is that light is really just sound from the ether that's hitting our realm. Thales said everything is made of water in different modalities. And I think Thales is absolutely 100% correct. But there is a lot of this knowledge that is hidden in allegory of religious and spiritual writings. And I came to a lot of these conclusions through a process of reading and studying different spiritual, substrates, different spiritual ideas, but looking at them several different ways, looking at them as true, and literal, looking at them allegorically, and looking at them both ways, which I think in a lot of aspects, they are both true and allegory. But what we do is we believe in, Santa Claus. I mean, we're taught Santa Claus when we were a kid. We believe in Bigfoot. We believe in these conceptual ideas, and those take the place of what we see in the world around us. So one of the biggest aha moments for me was going through and reading Genesis, the book, the beginning of Genesis, and reading the creation story, where God created night and day. He created light by speaking, so sound creates light. That was the first takeaway I got from that. It's amazing because that's what Nikola Tesla said. Not nearly as smart as Tesla, and I wouldn't ever claim to be. But Tesla said that sound creates light. Sonoluminescence is a good way to see that, to actually model that. You can demonstrate it. Ken Wheeler talks about dielectricity and magnetism. And what he's got here is and I'm hopefully a lot of you have seen this, but I'm going to show it just for some reference point. This is a supercell that he made. So essentially it's ferrule fluid and then a lubricant with it. And it's between two flat pieces of glass. And then he's got lights around it so you can see into it. And then he uses a magnet to create what you actually can be demonstrated as the ether. Now, it's important to know that science that believes in a heliocentric model and a globe and the sun and space and particles bumping into each other also believes that those particles can exist as waves or particles, which is stupid. Waves aren't like a tangible thing that you can grab. The ocean isn't waves. Waves happen in the ocean. It describes something that they do. It's not a noun. But they treat it as such, which is just stupid. It doesn't make any sense. With the ether, you can explain, instantaneous action at a distance. So take the dual slit experiment, for example. And I heard Ken talk about this today, and that's what finally prompted me to bring this up and talk about the dual slit experiment. I never talked about it before. I've talked about it one-on-one with Jake Jones with Intellectual Ketchup several times, and he you're wrong. It doesn't mean any blah blah blah. And I'm like, finally, what I did, because I think he's heard a lot of just garbage about it, and he's right. There's a lot of garbage out there, and I finally had to pin him down and yell at him and say, people don't understand entanglement. They don't understand their entanglement in the realm. They think that they can leave Earth and go to the mythical place called space and float around. They think things are in space and orbiting the Earth, and they think the Earth is orbiting the sun. And people don't understand entanglement. You are of the ether yourself. You are light. You are an expression of the ether. You may not like that. You may think that negates God, and that does not at all negate God. It doesn't at all. It's just kind of describing the substrate. It's kind of describing how we became. You yourself are of the light. You yourself would not exist without the light. The Bible says this, let there be light. And within that light carries your consciousness. Another aspect that has to be in the realm around us is your soul. And your soul has also got to be illuminated by that light too. And it's also caught in the ether. And the ether is nothing more than a magnetic field. That's all it is. And there's a dielectric pulse, and a magnetic pulse, and a dielectric, and the field is the same. They're not two different fields. All of these fields, all of the forces of nature, all exist in the same field, and they all work together to create what we see as the world around us. And so, yes, sometimes the world looks flat. Sometimes the world looks like it curves. But the reality of it is you can't really fully define something that you cannot understand your entanglement in it. And so with the dual slit experiment, there's some people that say that it tells you can create your own reality. And some people that say that, it shows that light acts as a wave sometimes and as a particle sometimes, which doesn't make any fucking sense at all. It's just a complete fucking lie. What it shows is it absolutely shows that the light that is being created from the ether, from the source, is putting you into the movie right in the middle of it. That's it. And it's all your perception. It's 100% your perception, but you cannot control it. It doesn't come from your intention. The behavior of what they call the particles or the waves doesn't come from your preconceived notion or from your thought. It's happening, and it's happening with you, and it's happening as you're happening. Instantaneous. It's an instantaneous phenomenon. Just poof, there it is. It just is. It's like switching on. You flip on a light switch. You flip on a light switch. Don't believe that there are photons of light that are being emitted from that light bulb and being shot at you. That's not what's happening. That's not what's happening. It's a disturbance. It's a sound. It's a frequency that's hitting the medium that's causing light. Take an uninsulated wire that's hot and throw water on it and see if it arcs. See if you see light being created. You'll see light in the blue spectrum, which I don't think is good for you, but you'll see light. So I'm going to show you this video, the supercell that Ken made, and what he's showing is the ether. And here's his point: is you're seeing this is a magnet that is a round magnet with a hole in the middle. So there's no magnetism happening in the middle, and you will see the magnetic field right there. What you're going to see is, you're going to see sacred geometry. You're going to see all those coming through, and that sacred geometry is expressing the ether as well. Watch.
No iPhone, no camera, nothing. I've got tons of camera equipment. You will never.
And so basically the liquid in there is about 1 micron thick, according to Ken. And look how it's creating a 3D image, like a hologram. But also look in the center of the magnet, where there is no magnetism. There's the field there too. And it's creating it all around you. You're looking at a model of the ether. You're looking at what's causing the ether around you. And it's happening in fluid. It's happening in sort of a fluid. So it's not a complete reproduction of what's happening around you, but it's a very, very close model of it. And particle science, fake Newtonian, magic humping particles have to have the ether in their explanation too, but they just call it dark matter now, or they call it quantum foam, stuff like that. It's ridiculous. It's an absolute lie. It is an absolute, just straight up fucking lie. But interestingly enough, one of the things that I heard Ken say, I was doing a lot of study today, and I watched a lot of Ken Wheeler, and one of the things that he had said was the rise or the acceptance of science that believes in atoms and believes in particles is commensurate with the rise of materialism. And if you study theosophy or anthroposophy at all, that was about 100 years ago. That's what they were talking about. And this was also when you're having the discussion between ether and particles, and Einstein and Tesla, and those things are happening. But the reality of it is whether we like it or not, the entire world, the entire universe is continuing to propagate forward, or backward, or a direction. I don't want to get caught too much in that, but it's an expression that's continuing to move forward. And so you're not a static, you're not in a static realm that doesn't move and doesn't change. There's nothing alive that doesn't change. Nothing. If you believe the earth is dead, then you believe the earth is a rock that you live on and somehow can grow plants on. And it changes. Is it changing shape? I don't know. It's very possible that it is. I mean, but I don't have enough, information or observation to even make that claim. So that's a conceptual claim, which I don't feel like, trying to make at the moment. But what I am saying, though, is that we will move from the age that we are in into another age that's coming. And theosophy describes what will end this age as the war of all against all. What you're seeing in science, and you're seeing all around you, is you're seeing this push for people to move towards a create your own reality kind of thing. And so while particle science is a lie, it's a lie. It's not demonstratable. It makes no sense. I mean, it's funny. What's funny is that you have these people saying, okay, we're trying to say, well, what about satellites? There's satellites, blah, 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 blah. Well, okay, except that for a satellite to work, the ether has to be there. That's why they call it, quantum foam, or they call it, dark matter or something. They treat it the same as the ether. They just call it a different name because they're like, well, we proved that the ether doesn't exist, which isn't true. If the ether wasn't there, there would be no satellites. There would be no wireless induction. We wouldn't be text messaging each other. You wouldn't be watching this video on your phone without being plugged into the wall and getting the signal coming through particles bumping into each other. Like, it's really that simple. The answer really is that simple around you. And so if you want to discuss the shape of the earth, the terra firma, say it's flat, I'll agree with you. I agree with you that we don't live on a spinning globe. I'll agree with you that all of that is untrue. I'll also agree with you that we don't really know what is going on around us in the world. We know by maps, we know what we're shown, but this is the stuff that we're shown by the handlers of this part of the epoch that we're in, this age that we're in, and there's a deception. There's an absolute deception, afoot, and we all know it. Everybody's waking up to it. Everybody sees it. So, keep it simple, and observe, but also look at the inverse of things. So, for instance, you do not store knowledge in your brain. Your mind doesn't store knowledge. You don't have a hard drive built in. What you have are neural pathways that are actually accessing the ether around you, or maybe not exactly that way, but they're accessing the world around you. And that's where that knowledge is actually stored. It's actually stored in the very nature of reality itself. And so through a process of where we kind of initiate ourselves to a higher learning, we can begin to get this information on your own. You don't have to learn it from a third-party source. You can. There's certainly a lot of help and a lot of wisdom and a lot of knowledge, but you have to be able to deduce what is right and what makes sense and what harmonizes. And a good way to do that is to study religious texts, because there's a great deal of truth that is sewn into them. And start looking at religious texts and start looking at what harmonizes from one religious text to the next. and then start looking at that from an explanation of science. And you can see from an explanation of science with the creation story, with just the simple fact that God spoke and said, let there be light, and then there was light. And then God created night, which is the other end of that dielectric circuit. And then God created the sun and the moon and the luminaries, which is of the ether. I have been on this massive kick, understanding that I've come to the conclusions that a lot of the same conclusions, without studying Tesla deeply, I've come to a lot of the same conclusions by studying the Bible. And I bring the Bible up a lot because it's the one I know best, but by studying that from kind of a spiritual science model, we're looking at it saying, okay, what is it really saying? Well, if this was really happening, what's going on. And that's where I think the creation story is just a very good one. It's a very, 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 very good one to get into. So I would suggest, do that. But to really start to get there on your own, it's a process. And it's a process that's similar to learning any other discipline. But you have to do it internally. People around you shouldn't necessarily notice this change in you. It's not something that you do in your ego where you're trying to show people, off. One of the reasons that I started letting my hair go into dreadlocks, and I'm letting it do it naturally, and it's taking a long time, and it looks ratty. It looks terrible. So I grew my hair out, and I was spending an ungodly amount of time brushing it and just going, man, my hair is gorgeous. I love it. Because it was beautiful, and it was becoming a problem, for my ego. And so I said, okay, I'm going to let that go. I have to, I have to let it go. I can't be that focused on this, flesh puppet, that I am. But and it's also important too, if you, as example, if I see a flat earther arguing with a glober, okay, and I think this is such an interesting thing to see. And I've said this argument too. Well, you can't have an unsealed, pressurized environment sitting next to a vacuum. And that is 100% true. Well, in keeping with particle science, once those problems arise, the general reaction is to say, oh, well, then that's not what it is. It's not a vacuum. And so now then I'd say, well, it's a pressure gradient. Oh, okay, it's a pressure gradient. Well, except that a pressure gradient would essentially function the same as a vacuum. So they're saying it's a vacuum, non-vacuum, because another part of the problem is that they're also saying that sunlight are photons moving from the sun through space and then hitting the earth. And that can't happen in a vacuum. There is no such thing as the speed of light. The dual slit experiment proved it, which is why it's a problem. The dual slit is a problem for both flat Earth and for both the globe, unless you understand that it's actually the ether. And I didn't understand it was the ether, but I understood it was the light. And I understood that I was of that light, and that without that light, I am not here. I don't exist. And so my very existence, my entanglement is 100% tied to this realm that is getting that light. That's why you can't leave Earth and go to space, because you are built of the light that is entangled in this Earth realm that we live in. That's why NASA is the biggest purchaser of helium. Yeah, they've got shit up there, but it's not in space. There's no space. There's not an empty, vacuous place where they can go and exist. It just doesn't exist, and they know it, and I mean, it's that really should be your argument against the globe. It shouldn't be trying to explain. I mean, you're trying to explain, atom-based, particle-based science to an atom-based, particle-based, religious zealot. It's like if you are a Protestant and you're going to Catholic Church and trying to explain Catholicism to the, to the priest, right? They know it, right? They know Catholicism, and so when you're like, well, this is a contradiction. I heard that this is a contradiction. Well, yeah, you were right. It is a contradiction, but they've already justified it like 10 years ago. You miss that part. So then it's just like you're arguing something. And they're like, okay, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, and they're right. They don't know what they're talking about either. Too, they don't understand that that light is not particles. They don't understand the implications of the fact that light is not particles or photons or waves. They don't understand the implications of the fact that light is a reaction. It's an absolute reaction, and that is really what the argument is. And it can be demonstrated. You can demonstrate this. It's not something to run from. It's scientifically demonstratable. That's why they call you names. That's why they say that they understand it. Oh, it's already been decided. We already understand it. We already understand it. Now, I absolutely love. That's the thing with gravity and the Cavendish experiment, and because that's a problem. That's a problem too, because they can demonstrate gravity. Well, they can demonstrate what they call gravity. And you can look it up, the Cavendish experiment. It's done all the time. Craig from Fight the Flat Earth is 100% right. It's done all the time. And I said, well, I don't think that I told him, I said, I don't think that that's actually real. He said, oh, it's done millions of times. He's right. He's fucking right. He's a dick, but he's right. But the thing is again, still, it brings into light. They don't understand the dielectric properties. They don't understand what matter is. Matter is magnetism and a dielectric circuit. Magnetism is what gives it density. So if I take one object that's smaller and I move it towards another object, what happens is the smaller object loses its dielectric property and becomes a part of the dielectric property of this. Okay. And so instead of having a north and south pole, this object itself just becomes a part of the north and south pole of this object. That's what's happening. It's losing its own polarity and becoming a part of the polarity of the larger, larger in volume, larger in space, not larger in potential, but just kind of larger in actual, volume. It's actually very simple. These things really aren't that hard to understand. But makes it easier to understand is when you start approaching everything around you with a degree of reverence and you don't get brought into reflexive, garbage. Reverence is really the first step in initiation into higher knowledge and higher learning. Everything is preparing you for where you're headed. Life prepares itself for where it's going. It's just part of the nature, of the history of your life and where you're headed. So the things that you've been through, I think the first thing to do is look at them and, with some reverence. What have you learned? How can you apply it? Where can you see, not where can you find evidence of your notion? Where can you see truth? Where can you see truth? Where can you find truth? The inverse square law, as example, and I did a video on this not that long ago. Basically, the closer you are to the source of a light, the less area that's illuminated, but the more intense the light is, and then that moves like this as you move away from it. It illuminates a larger area, but it becomes less intense. So something that looks small or seems insignificant in and of itself has more information than something that seems very, very large. Look at these simple things. Learn from those simple things, and revere the lesson that you learned, and do that for a while. And just stay there. And that's a good place. That's a good place to be. That's a good place to start. Well, folks, I'm going to hop off for now. I love you. And thank you to the 3 people that watch. If you like it, please like and subscribe. Please help me out. Share it. Tell people about, what I'm doing, what I'm talking about. We are going to be coming back with more Big Skinny Show. I promise. Jake is working on some stuff that is kind of blowing my mind. He's shared some of it with me, and I'm really excited to see it come out. But anyway, y'all, you be blessed, and we will talk later on.